In a grand hall, Fred walks up the steps during the coming-of-age ceremony. On that day, people celebrate their first true birthday, and we see some people really happy, while others look dejected. Fred waits to hear what skill he will get from the gods. We then see his facial reaction showing fear and sadness upon hearing the news. Inside a mine, 2 miners decide to take a quick break. Will protests, saying they have only been working for 3 hours, but his buddy says it is fine. They sit down to eat some food, and Will asks how old Chrissy Island. His buddy holds his locket and opens it, revealing a picture of a cute girl who will turn 5 next month. Her birthday is coming soon, but her dad has no idea what to get her. Will says they should then work hard so that they can get her whatever she wants. However, some kobold monsters have spotted the 2 workers. Will's buddy warns him to look behind him and uses his axe to block the monster's attack. He shouts at Will to run away, but doesn't notice another kobold jump at him from behind. Will watches in terror as his friend is ripped apart by the savage beast. It then turns its eyes on him and jumps at him. Will is saved though by a blast of fire that kills the monster before it can harm him. The Mage Guild has arrived and targets the 8 kobolds. Owen orders his units to prepare for battle and to not let a single one escape. The support team casts a light spell to increase his ability while the attack team keeps firing. The medical team, meanwhile, checks on the victims. One of the kobolds, though, is still alive and attempts to attack Malcolm, who panics. Fred rushes to the rescue and calls on the arm of the flame god to destroy his enemies with fire. He casts a fireball, which strikes the monster, killing it. He then rushes to his friend. Malcolm apologizes, but Fred says there is nothing to worry about. Malcolm asks how his friend can fight so bravely when they are nearly the same age. Fred replies that the only thing he takes pride in is his magic, and that he fights to get stronger so that everyone will acknowledge him. Malcolm's brother Leo then arrives and checks on his sibling. Fred looks on and then starts to think about skills. These are special abilities bestowed by the gods upon young people who come of age. He looks forward to next month's coming-of-age ceremony, where he believes he will get the strongest skill. His thoughts are interrupted by Owen, who tells the Mage Guild to gather up. A man calling himself Grime is arguing with a woman in town. He asks some of them to check it out, while the rest will continue clearing the mine. Leo was instructed to lead the group heading to town, and he takes Fred and Malcolm with him. Sometime later in the village, Grime is enraged that the girl dares to refuse his invitation. She tells him to stop and asks what is wrong with him. He grabs her by the arm though, and she screams at him to let go. He then hears a voice telling him to stop. It is from Fred, who commands him to release the woman. Grime turns his attention to the young man and mocks him for trying to be a hero. He then moves forward and attacks Fred for daring to interfere. Fred faces off against Grime. Leo arrives and can't believe Fred ran ahead of them. Malcolm rushes to the girl to make sure she is okay. He then looks at his friend, his face filled with concern. Fred attempts to cast a spell, but his chanting is interrupted by his opponent's swing. He falls back, looking frustrated as he is not getting a chance to complete the spell. Leo says that magic is just an imitation of skills. Man-made magic is no match for miracles bestowed by the gods. He tells the young man to watch closely as he will stop Grime's sword with his skill. He adds that Fred will know what to want to do. Leo then goes to face Grime while Fred gets in position. He tells the ruffian that he was probably using a skill. Grime confirms and Leo answers that he has no shame in picking on a kid who doesn't even have a skill yet. Grime makes fun of the court mage guild for babysitting kids. He then raises his sword and prepares to strike his enemy. Leo closes his eyes and then opens them, activating his skill Radiant Arrow. Grime is surprised as multiple light arrows appear all around Leo. They all fire at the same time, and many of them strike their intended target, injuring him. Leo says that it is a rain of arrowheads shot at literal light speed, which makes them impossible to avoid. Fred is amazed as he sees why magic can't compete with skills. He reminds himself not to just be in awe and starts casting his flame spell now that the enemy has stopped moving. He concentrates the flow of magic in his palm. This time, he is able to complete his chant. He casts the fireball and hurls it at his enemy, striking Grime from behind. This is enough to end the fight. As he is then restrained and escorted by other members of the Mage Guild, Owen arrives and tells Fred that what he did wasn't bad. He says he took care of the mind monsters and rushed over to the town. Fred says he was able to win because of Leo, and that his magic was completely useless against Grime. Owen says he shouldn't compare magic, which anyone can learn, with skills, which are given by heaven. He also reminds us that he will have his coming-of-age ceremony in a month. He hopes Fred will receive a good skill. Fred can barely wait. He pumps his fist and vows to get an awesome skill just like Leo. It's a beautiful sunny day as Fred wakes up. He stretches for a bit, then prepares some tea. He heads to the table, but notices Malcolm still in bed and looking a bit sad. He asks what the matter is and then offers his friends some tea. Malcolm cheers up and says he will have some. Later, numerous citizens are buzzing about the street since it is the day of the coming-of-age ceremony. Some friends greet each other and share that they were so nervous that they didn't get to sleep. In front of them are the members of the Mage Guild. Malcolm is worried that they might get a useless skill. Fred tries to cheer up his buddy, saying they will surely be the top mages in the Court Mage Guild. Malcolm smiles a bit. Others mention that Fred is such a talented mage, which is why he is confident. Some members then call Leo, but he looks serious and doesn't reply. It turns out he is also worried about his brother Malcolm. They soon arrive inside the chapel, where a priest announces that the ceremony will now begin. He instructs the candidates to come to the altar when their name is called. He then mentions numerous names. Malcolm looks quite tense and is visibly sweating. Fred, though, remains calm and confident. Finally, Malcolm is called, and he slowly walks up to the altar. He closes his eyes as the priest states that the skill bestowed upon him is Lightning Bolt. It is an extremely powerful skill that allows the user to fire a giant lightning spear. Malcolm is teary-eyed with relief as the whole crowd erupts in praise. He has gotten the best skill of the day so far. His buddies in the guild hug and congratulate him while Fred gives him a thumbs up. The priest tells everyone to be quiet as the ceremony is not yet over. Fred is called last, and everyone's attention now turns to him. He walks up to the altar as he waits for the priest to announce his skill. His expression turns to shock, though, when he hears that his skill is Control Key. No one in the crowd has any idea what that island. Owen then asks the priest what rank the Control Key skill island. The priest says it is unknown, but theorizes that it is probably so weak that it won't fit under any of the letter ranks. Owen is devastated, and then tells everyone that he did not expect an incompetent to come from their esteemed mage guild. Others start speaking up, saying they were against admitting a child who had not yet gone through the ceremony. No matter how good he is at magic, it is useless against skills. Owen looks at his fellow mages and says that keeping an incompetent around will be even more problematic. Fred runs at Owen in shock at what is happening. Malcolm tries to run to his friend's side, but his brother Leo stops him. Owen then strips Fred of his position. The young man is now crying as the leader calls him a greenhorn, who should now start from scratch. Fred then falls to his knees in grief while Owen stands with his back turned against the young man. Fred packs up all his things in his dorm bedroom and leaves his coat by a bucket before he leaves. 6 years ago, Fred lived with the noble family of Nostal in their mansion away from the city. One day as a boy, he was observing his half-brothers riding their horses in the yard. He asks his father if he can also ride a horse. Horse. The father does not even look at him as he tells him that he has no use for horses and only needs to return to his room after his meal. The boy asks why he cannot ride a horse when his brothers are free to do so, but the father has no care to argue about it and simply replies that he should go to his room. He gives up and is about to head to his room with his head low. One of his big brothers calls him and invites him to ride horses with them. Fred is so excited that he goes with him without question. They go to the stable where Fred's other half-brothers are. They show him a black horse. They say they have readied it for him. They play the part of caring brothers by teaching him that the way to ride it is for him to go around its back and touch the horse from behind. The three brothers smile as they anticipate what the horse will do. As instructed, the boy gets behind the horse and touches it from behind. The horse gets startled and goes wild. Just seeing Fred fooled and scared makes the three brothers laugh. Fred's mother sees what the three are doing and runs for her son. And later, mother and son go to the park, where the woman tells Fred that his brothers are mean to him because he has her common blood and can't accept them into the family. Seeing her son sad, she tells him that she will teach him magic. The mother chants an incantation that results in a fireball in her palm. The boy's face lights up at his mother's amazing ability. She explains that she learned magic when she was young, and she can teach him too as long as he keeps their lessons a secret. The boy gets his hand near the flame and feels its warmth. A time later, he is proud that he can do it himself. Suddenly, Chloe the maid barges into his room to tell him that something happened to his mother. Later, the boy holds his mother's hand, while she lies weak in her bed. He gladly tells her that he can now use 6 spells. The mother says that she is glad to hear it and then closes her eyes for her forever rest. Chloe cries as she sees the boy plead with his mother to wake up. Later at night, Fred leaves a letter in his bedroom for Chloe to find. Chloe discovers it and reads to hear from her former master that he has appreciated her kindness towards him and his mother through all the years they stayed in the Nostal family house. Chloe looks at the window, feeling like it was she who should thank him and his mother, since they were the only ones who showed kindness to her as a maid. She bids her former master farewell. Fred heads to the city where he tries to get into the Court Mage Guild. The officer insists that he get back 2 years later when he already received his still at the coming-of-age ceremony, but the boy would not take no for an answer. Owen, the guildmaster, sees the commotion and asks Fred if he knows how to use magic. Fred feels insulted that he is being treated like a child and unleashes the magic spell, which strengthens his punch, and tries to punch him. Owen creates a barrier that easily deflects the boy's attack. He gets intrigued by the boy and allows him to participate in the entry exam. In the arena, Fred performs well in mock battles. By the end of the matches, Owen raises the boy's hand to signal his victory. In the crowd is Malcolm Combe, who asks his brother Leon, who the boy island? Leon replies that he is a boy as old as he island. Malcolm Combe asks if he can be like Fred someday. Ever the loving brother, Leon lifts him up and tells him that he will surely be like him someday. Back at the present, Malcolm Combe is looking for Fred in his bedroom, only to find it empty. He sees that his friend left his coat, and it dawns on him that he really left. Meanwhile, Fred is walking the busy streets, carrying his bag of belongings. He reviews and counts that he can only live 6 months in a cheap inn with the money he has. It makes him realize that he needs to get a job before his 6 months are up. He tells himself that he will figure something out. He worries that without a skill, he will be turned away from whatever job he looks for. He reviews that it does not matter if he wants to be a blacksmith, apothecary, tailor, or chef. All of those professions require a skill. He wonders what kind of job he can do with his control key skill. Something from behind suddenly bumps into him, putting him off balance. He sees that it is a man who is running fast. He then notices that his bag of belongings is missing, and realizes that the running man is a thief who just stole it. He says farewell to his savings with tears, only to realize that he should not give up. He casts a wind spell that makes him run fast. He goes after the thief and zigzags through the people to get to him. Despite his speed, the thief remains smiling, confident that he will not be caught. Fred realizes that despite his speed, he can't close the distance. Looking closely at the thief's legs, he sees that he also has a skill that makes him run faster than him. No matter how hard he tries, he only grows farther and farther from the thief. Meanwhile, the thief is smiling that he stole something with ease with his skill that transformed his legs into something agile and strong. A man is on the roof seeing the thief running. The man on the roof smiles, confident that he will catch the guy. The man jumps down from the roof to cut the thief's path. He tells the thief that he can't escape his eyes even with his legs. The thief recognizes him as the adventurer he was escaping from, and brings out a knife to fight him. He attacks the man, but no matter what he does, the adventurer keeps evading with ease. Fred is amazed at the adventurer's quick reflexes. As he continues watching, he realizes that it is not his reflexes that are impressive, but that he is moving as if he can see the future. To him, he is like an eagle that is free. The man jump kicks the thief, putting him off balance. It confirms to Fred that his skill is the eyes that see the future. The adventurer ties up the thief and returns the bag to Fred. The adventurer shows the necklace he got back from the thief and confirms that with his client's valuables back, his quest is complete. His quest reminds Fred of the peacekeeping duties he had when he was still with the Court Mage Guild, and he realizes that adventuring may be the job for him. He asks the man if he can teach him all about being an adventurer. The man says he would be happy to do so and introduces himself as Jack. He tells him that anyone can be an adventurer, because there is no discrimination based on skill quality, so even dropouts can rise through the ranks with brute strength. He continues to explain that some jobs require them to help old ladies carry their things to slay monsters, and that the best part of being an adventurer is that he can choose requests that suit him. Fred asks for the downsides, but the man plays coy and tells him that he will find out eventually. He says that he does not need to worry about it since he's just starting out. Jack brings him to the guild and explains that it is the organization that takes care of adventurers. They go inside where Jack says he needs to leave him to report on his completed request. Fred shakes his hand, and they part ways. Fred heads to the registration counter where a receptionist meets him. He goes through the process and signs some papers. He is amazed that anyone can just come in and sign up without many questions. The receptionist presents him with his adventurer's badge and explains that it is the badge of the lowest E ranks since he is still starting. He pins it on his chest and says that he will do his best to get promoted. Someone from behind recognizes Fred and calls him. It turns out to be Grime, who is curious why he is in the guild. Grime sees his badge and laughs that this means he got fired from the Court Mage Guild. He sees an opportunity for revenge and readies his giant sword for battle. Grime points his giant sword at Fred to threaten him further. He also shows him his adventurer's badge. Fred does not understand why he is showing it, but the receptionist recognizes its silver line designed to mean it's a B rank badge. Grime justifies his loss before, as merely a result of the other Court Mage Guild members intervening in their fight. He dashes towards Fred, and he dodges at the Roddy Hines. Last minute before the blade touches him, the big enemy asks what he can do now that he is alone. It frustrates Fred that he is right, as he recalls that it was only because of Leon's support that he won against him before. He does not lose hope as he believes he can still win. He faces his opponent, assuming he will win the fight. Meanwhile, the crowd is observing the fight, and are not surprised that Grime's in one again. At first, Jack ignores what is happening only to be shocked that Fred is the one fighting Grime. The others ask Jack if he is strong, but Jack does not think so since he just registered as an adventurer earlier. Grime laughs as the young man can barely evade his sword attacks. Fred tries to recite an incantation, but Grime would not let him finish. Fred worries about Grime's reputation as a troublemaker. The crowd grows frustrated that Fred is not attacking, and so they yell at him for being a coward. Jack does not think he is because he could have just not taken the challenge from the beginning. He wonders why the young man does not just use his skill. His friend asks Jack what his eyes can see about Fred. He replies that he has no magic right now to use his all-seeing eyes and so can't properly observe the young man. The battle continues with Grime, making a slash that cuts and pushes the wind towards Fred. The young man gets hit like he just took a hard punch, sending him backwards. Fred sees that he is wounded. Suddenly, he sees a window graphic with a notification that says that, since he is in danger, his skill tutorial will begin. He does not understand, but as he reads on, he notices that he can see Grime's stats, including his skill and swordsmanship. He is reading out loud, making Grime wonder how he knows of his skill. A virtual keyboard appears, and an instruction says that he can copy Grime's skill moment. He presses the C key while holding onto the control key. He does it, and then the instructions say that he needs to press the V key while holding the control key to finalize copying his skill. He is then shocked to see from the status window that the swordsmanship skill got transferred to his skill slot. The young man is happy to now know how his skill works. Meanwhile, Jack asks him why he is acting so strange, but Fred can't answer. The young man then steals Jack's sword from his belt and rushes back to the battle. Grime is insulted that he thinks he can take him on with swordsmanship and readies to counter. Fred makes a sword strike and is able to wound the enemy from his side. Fred felt that his body moved on its own to execute the sword strike. He is amazed at the power of his skill. Grime is frustrated because he can tell that his swordsmanship mirrors his. He wonders if he got kicked out of the Mage Guild because he received a swordsmanship skill. He senses danger emanating from his opponent. He tries not to follow his instinct and goes for the attack. Fred manages to block his swing, but finds the force very heavy. Grime explains that it is the weight of his sword techniques that he has built up and honed, and that has become his pride. He yells at the young man, telling him that there is no way for someone who just picked up a sword for the very first time to break his pride, and then kicks him. The kick is so powerful that Fred gets pushed back. The young man tries to get up, but feels like he can no longer win. He remembers Malcolm Combe asking him why he is so strong. He remembers Owen telling him that he should start over from scratch. He remembers his mother volunteering to teach him magic. These memories give him the resolve to get back up and finish the fight. He sees a barrel and runs towards it, and then kicks it towards Grime. Grime sees it rolling towards him, and slices it in two, exposing the oil within. Fred throws a lamp at the oil, starting a fire that surrounds Grime. The enemy recognizes the strategy as a means to drain his stamina with smoke, while also sealing his movements with a wall of flame. He declares that it is not enough. Fred then enters the flame to face him. He makes a strike while Grime is open, which leads to the big man losing his giant sword. Fred then chants a fire spell and declares that it is his pride. He palm strikes him with the spell, causing Grime to fly away with a tornado of flame. Jack is stunned. The crowd goes wild, cheering for Fred's victory. Later, Fred apologizes to the receptionist for the mess, but she tells him that since Grime started it, there is no problem. After which, he meets up with Jack, who tells him that he has shown him a good fight. Jack admits that he only saw him as some clueless kid before and apologizes for it. Fred says he does not need to apologize, and tries to return his sword to him. The man says that there is no need, and tells him that it is his sword now. He explains that it is called the Sword of Departure, and that he got it from his father. He believes that he has finally found the one he can entrust the sword to. The young man takes the sword and the two part ways. As Fred walks away, Jack can tell that he will be a great mage someday. Fred is in his inn room, reviewing his skill and figuring out that it is the power to copy and make other skills his own. He figures that he should try his skill away from prying eyes. He then notices the displayed map on the wall, and realizes that he can test out his skill in the mine where he and the Mage Guild faced. He wants to check the mine out and see if the monsters have respawned. Later on, he goes to the street and asks a horse cart driver to take him to the mine. The driver tells him that he can't do it because he does not want to go anywhere near the find place. Realizing that the mine is still feared by the people, it convinced Fred even more that it is the perfect place to test out his skill. He tells the driver that he understands and that it would be okay for him to just drop him off near the place. Fred hitches a ride with him until outside the city. The driver then stops his cart and insists that he go back to town, to the point that he does not even want to charge him for the ride. The man then tells him about how his best friend got killed by the monsters last month, and that it would not be proper for him to send a boy out to his doom. Fred realizes how much that day must have pained the man. Fred reveals to him that he was one of the court mage guild that arrived that day, and how he remembered that a miner had already fallen before they arrived. He continues to say that it is a place of deep significance for him too, but that the dangers that remain there are all the more reason he has to go back there. He pleads with him to let him go there, and assures him that he will go back. The driver drives him all the way to the mine. He asks the young man to be careful in there. Fred enters the cave. On the ground, he comes across a locket with a picture of a little girl smiling and picks it up. The ceiling suddenly collapses, so he runs towards the exit, but the cave traps him. He chants magic to strengthen his punch, but it is nowhere near enough to break through. He knows that he can only use the magic 5 or 6 times, and determines that it is not the time to try again. He realizes that he needs to use his control key. He opens his graphic window and sees that there are new commands. He accesses the library of knowledge to search for information. He presses Ctrl and F to search for a way out. The computer loads, after which it says that escape is possible. It suggests that he uses the skill of excavation that is possessed by a monster in the mine, so he plans to face the monster on his way. He explores the cave while scanning his graphic window. He notices a button and presses it. Tells him that the button can only be unlocked when his skill proficiency has reached a certain level. It makes him realize that his skill gets stronger the more he uses it. Suddenly, he hears screeching in the darkness. He looks out and sees countless numbers of monsters known as dark bats. He determines that this is not the monster with an excavation skill. One bat rushes at him, so he dodges it. He thought he had evaded it, only for the creature to bite on his shoulder. He tries to get it off him, but it is hanging on. He determines that dark bats have the skill to drain the blood of humans until they die. He manages to get the bat off him and throws it away. He wants to deal with all of them quickly, but knows he can't drain his magic on them. He pulls out his sword and uses his swordsmanship skill to slice away at them again and again. No matter how many he slays, there still remain many. He feels like he has no choice but to use magic. Before he can, he notices from his graphic window that there is a command he can use. He presses it, and an arrow appears on many of the bats. One bat attacks him, so he slices it with his sword. Instantly, every bat gets sliced too. Fred is shocked that every marked enemy was slain. He determines that as long as he can put marks on his targets, he can wipe them all with a single magic spell. He puts marks on each bat, and then unleashes magic fireballs that eliminate them all. Later on, Fred finds a group of kobolds. He does not care that they all look like they want to kill him, and is more focused on how they do not have the excavation skill. He marked them with an arrow instead. He sliced one of them in two, which sliced all of them automatically. He remembers how he used fireballs on the bats earlier, and how just firing at one bat means automatically firing 10 fireballs. He realizes he needs to carefully consider when to use his marking ability. Looking at the corpses of the kobolds disturbs him since they seem so human to him. He takes the kobold skill of night vision, and so gets a clear view in the dark. He embarked further and further into the darkness, until he was shocked to see an area with mountains of magic stones. He thinks about how much of a fortune he can make by taking all of them back. He then notices a magic circle on a wall marked by knives. He calls it a demon seal, and recognizes it as the doorway of demons. That must have been the reason why monsters are so plentiful. He pulls out all the knives, making the magic circle ineffective. Suddenly, the cave trembles again. A giant worm with sharp teeth suddenly digs itself out of the walls. He recognizes it as the rock-clad worm. It strikes at him, so he dodges. He tries to cut its skin, but it is too tough to scratch. He determines that the enemy is too tough, and that he should regroup. He uses the cobbled skill of stealth to blend in with the darkness. It leaves the worm confused and unable to find its target. He is glad that he is temporarily safe, but has no idea how to move forward. He would like to use magic, but remembers that even his strongest spell could not dig through a stone wall. He opens his graphic window and sees that it is the monster with the excavation skill he is looking for. He copies and pastes the skill, and then rushes at the creature. He activates the excavation skill, which transforms his hand into something bigger and earth-like. He uses it to punch the worm, which cracks its outer shell. He thinks he has one, but it only makes the worm aggressive. It charges at him, but he charges back. It eats him, but his punch creates a hole. That becomes his exit. With this move, the worm coils and dies. Fred is panting, but is relieved that it is finally over. He is glad the skill of excavation can be used as a weapon just as well as it can be used for digging. He also uses it to shatter the magic stones off the stone walls. He puts them all in a bag, and is glad that he can finally buy new clothes and equipment once he gets to town. With his excavation skill, he punches his way out of the cave until he gets to the entrance. There, he meets the driver of the horse again. He tells Fred that he came because he was worried about him. He then notices that Fred is wearing a locket. The young man tells him that he saw it in the mine and could not just leave it there. The driver remembers that it is the lock of his friend and is glad to see it again. He bows his head and grabs Fred's hand. With falling tears, he humbly thanks Fred for returning it. Fred does not know what to say. Later on, he gives a huge chunk of a magic stone to the driver. The young man tells him that what is left is already enough for him and asks the driver to use his share to fund the reconstruction of the tunnel. He assures him that he has already destroyed the source of the monsters so that they can return to work in the mine again. The driver looks at the locket with tears and says he will do it in honor of his partner. Fred then tells him that it is time to head back to town. He takes up the driver's offer earlier for a free ride. The driver laughs and says he will do it. Fred tries on his new clothes for adventuring, but he feels like they are too flashy to properly suit him. The The store owner assures him that it suits him perfectly. This assures him enough to take it. The moment he goes outside the store, he instantly regrets it. He walks the streets, thinking about the new skills he got from the mine, and how he needs to properly review them. He is afraid that if he tries out his new skill at the inn, he will destroy his room and trouble the inn owner. He decides he needs a place away from prying eyes. He then notices a trio of kids being troubled since their money is not enough to buy the flower the little girl wants. It reminds him of when he was still a little boy about to buy flowers for a girl. Back then, his father reprimanded him for talking to a commoner child. He was forced to walk away without saying a word to the girl. He smiles, realizing he can do better this time. He approaches the kids and volunteers to treat them with the flower. The kids are very happy that they got to have the flower they wanted and thank him for his help. As they leave, Fred overhears that they are going to give it to a nun. It signals to him that the children are orphans from the orphanage of Sako Church. He reviews that Sako Church is one of the largest religions in the world. It reminds him that there should be an abandoned church on the outskirts of town. He sees the potential of an abandoned, spacious place away from people's eyes where he can train. Later that night, Fred goes to the abandoned church. He counts the magic stones he has left that he did not convert into cash. He accounts that it has enough HP to fully restore his depleted magic power once he thoroughly examines his skills. He opens his status window and sees that his magical capacity has grown larger. He also discovers that he can see a picture of those he copied skills from. He appreciates that he now has a way to see the numerical value of skill rather than relying on intuition. He reviews the number of skills he currently has and sees that he still has all of them after 24 hours. It confirms to him that he can permanently use the skills he copied. He is amazed that the skill he has for life can easily become 6. The entrance door suddenly slams open, startling Fred. He looks behind with a tense readiness, but sees that it is a beautiful young girl. Despite seeing how innocent she looks, Fred does not want to lower his guard, in case it's a trap. He reminds himself that using women and children is a common trap used by thieves, and so his hand remains on his sword handle. He sees the woman's cross necklace and realizes that she is from the Sako Church. The girl becomes conscious that he is staring at her chest and so covers up. In return, the girl sees his hexagram rank badge and becomes relieved that he is only an adventurer and not from anyone he is running from. He asks who she means, but the girl looks away and stays silent. He asks if she is being chased, so the girl becomes defensive and asks if he is interrogating her. As they calm down, they sit at one of the church benches. Fred introduces himself while hesitant to do so herself. The girl finally says that her name is Tina and asks that he keep their meeting a secret. Fred is intrigued that she gave her real name as he already found out her name through her status window. He asks himself if the girl is just naive or honest to a fault. Before the girl can tell him why she is being chased, they hear a voice outside. Fred asks if the people outside are the ones chasing her. 3 rogue knights enter with crosses designed on their helmets. They ask that Tina come with them. Tina refuses and says she will not give up until the darkness festering in the church is purged. The knights look down on her for her ideals and tell her that the world does not run on ideals alone. The leader of the knights orders one of them to bring her with them. The knight gets near her and tries to grab her. Before he can, Fred grabs his hand. The knight asks what he is doing. He replies that grown men should not gang up on a girl like this. The knight pulls away, and then pulls out his sword. It leads Fred to pull out his sword and disarm and then knock out the knight. He tells Tina to stay back, and he declares that he will end the fight quickly. A knight is sent flying away, and his comrades stare in shock, not expecting the young adventurer's power. Turning to Fred, they question if he realizes what he's doing. Going against them is to make an enemy of the Sako Church, the largest organization on the continent. He must have people he cares about, and they'll definitely be dragged into the fight. However, all that is irrelevant to the young man, whose eyes are steeled and unwavering. After all, he's a drifter with no home nor workplace, and now he has nothing left to lose. Besides, he stopped living his life worrying about appearances, being a nobleman's son, a court mage, and only being too restricted to save a girl in trouble. He's given up on all of that, and was now charging in to do what he felt was right. An enemy blocks his strike with a sturdy shield, but the sheer force is enough to make his knees waver. Still, they could not understand what he has to gain, but he emphasizes that none of that matters to him. He was helping the poor girl just because he wanted to. Tina's eyes shook in surprise, not expecting such loyalty. Fred brings his sword down and breaks through the sword. Surrounded by enemies, it was the perfect opportunity to test his skills. Activating the control key, screens suddenly flash by the knights, showing their statuses. Normally, skill activation consumes mon power every time they're used. He looks at his own status, wanting to see if his intuition and calculations are correct, and smiles in delight upon confirming that copying skills doesn't consume any of his power. It's also the reason why he can copy several at once. An enemy takes advantage of the distraction and jumps in to continue their battle. Looking at him, Fred copies his skill in that moment, and uses the foresight ability. The adventurer is able to see his strikes and intentions clearing, allowing him to counterattack with the perfect timing. Just like that, the squad leader falls with a huge gash on his chest. As if mocking him, he calls the knight's name, saying he has a pretty handy skill. This shocks the man who can't understand why his information was known. Just then, Fred began an incantation to end things right away. Nobody is able to defend, as he sends a powerful blast of wind their way. With all that settled, he turns to Tina, finally asking her to explain what was happening. First off, she thanks the young man for saving her, and the two same-age friends agree on how to address each other. Getting acquainted, she then asks if he's aware of the church and how it runs orphanages in the town. Their lives depend on donations from believers, but she found that priest Jeff has been embezzling that money. After finding out about this, she found evidence and tried to take it to the church headquarters, but the priest won't allow that to happen so easily. Things are finally starting to make sense to Fred, but he still doesn't know who she is to them. For a moment, she hesitates, but soon reveals that she's the Holy Maiden. Again, things become clearer. There is one of them in each town serving as a religious official. It possesses overwhelming healing skills, and are highly valued by the higher church. In fact, people of her position are referred to as emissaries of the goddess of healing. Naturally, Jeff wouldn't want his evil deeds to be exposed by her. He wonders what she's going to do now, and is told that she's still heading to headquarters quietly during the night. For the sake of church, which guides and heals people, news of internal strife would cause commotion. Fred suddenly stands up, saying they can't afford to take it easy and have to hurry up. If she wants to get to headquarters before dawn, Tina doesn't understand why he's helping and voluntarily getting caught up in such a mess. To him, the risk is all the more reason to involve himself and see things through. It's his job to accept requests as an adventurer, so he encourages her to make one right now. Struck by his kindness, the troubled maiden can't help but tear up, but steals her resolve and determination. As suggested, she asks for his help, promising to reward him later on. Fred smiles in satisfaction, and as an adventurer of the guild, officially accepts her request. The two run in the night, hoping to escape in silence and peace. However, this doesn't work too well, as voices suddenly tell him to stop. They were surrounded all of a sudden. Aside from the ordinary knight from earlier, an imposing man approached on horseback carrying a large weapon. As expected, the pair won't be allowed to pass so easily. Earlier, still deep in the town streets, Fred asked if there was another way. By crossing the bridge to get to headquarters, they're essentially asking to be ambushed. There was a longer route and safer route, but they would have to pass through checkpoints too. In other words, they have to go through there unless he wants to swim across the river. He chuckles, understanding that there's no choice but to get surrounded. Now the leader of the knights scolded the Holy Maiden for gallivanting with a man at night. Tina defends herself, arguing that she was doing no such thing. However, Fred stepped in and put himself between them. Since he's unwilling to let her go, they have to take him as well, even if he's the son of a noble. While the girl is surprised, he just commends their intelligence work, as they even managed to see who he was. Regardless, the adventurer refuses to give in, saying he's accepted a request to escort her safely. Annoyed by the foolish decision, Carl the captain tries to end things fast and commands his men to charge forward. Fred instructs Tina to head to the edge of the bridge. Sandwiched between two charging groups, he fixes his form and intends to fight back alone. He hates the fact that the knights are looking down on others from up high. Ready to dry everyone down from their pedestal, he starts off by using his skill and analyzing everyone's power. For insulting and taking advantage of the maiden, he charges his hand with magic power and swings to send a blade of wind at his enemies. Seeing his men get sent flying, Carl can't help but be surprised. As reported to him, the boy mirrors the skill of others and uses them as if they are his own. This time, Fred starts an incantation and summons a fireball, but it doesn't stop there. He combines it with wind blade, forming a flaming gust of slashes. The powerful spell hits its targets, and one particularly unfortunate knight finds himself burning through the armor. In a panicked reaction, he flails around and falls over the bridge, diving into the water below. The adventurer smiles, branding the move as the scorching wind blade. He's so happy with himself that it takes Tina's urgent warning to notice the approaching enemy. Raising his blade from behind the boy, the knight brought his sword down, but was blocked as Fred raised his own weapon. She stares at him, worried that he's showing off, but fails to notice the man creeping at her from behind. They both let their guards down, and now she was about to pay. Her screens are cut off with a blunt thud, and the young man, still fighting, looks back to see his enemies retreating with the girl he swore to protect. He tries to stop them, but the other guards get in his way. Unable to push forward, all he could do was watch as they took her unconscious body away. Fred cursed the enemies who were taking Tina. Trying his absolute best, he moves to catch them off guard, allowing the young fighter to counterattack and hack through one knight's thick armor. Two others come, hoping to stop him and avenge their comrade. Unfortunately for them, he's skilled enough in magic to cast a water spell fast. Their blades clash in the night, but what's odd is how the guards were unexpectedly slipping around. The water surrounding the boy was making them fall and miss. Fred takes advantage of the situation and activates his copy skill fast. A concentrated ball of fire appears in his palm, and the remaining enemy is shocked to see his own ability being used against him. A blazing bullet is shot at him, sending him flying back. Although shooting forward, the boy's eyes were aimed behind him, seething as he glared at Carl, who was watching his men fall. The adventurer sees and takes a shield from the ground. The last enemy charged in, his horse neighing and galloping towards the target. To his side, a long and heavy-ended weapon was at the ready. It was a halberd, which is the combination of a spear, an axe, and a claw. If Fred faced that head-on while his enemy was on horseback, his defeat would be certain. Surprisingly, he stood his ground and raised the shield, seemingly hiding his body behind it. Carl is annoyed by his brazenness and thrust his blade forward. While the shield is broken to bits and pieces, Istari was nowhere to be found. He looked around now, knowing what happened and where the boy had hidden. Just then, Fred appeared on his side, holding his sword tight. He swings right before the man could react, and a helmet is sent flying to the air. Nearly pouncing at him, the two are forced down to the pavement. He pins him down and places his blade by the man's unprotected head and neck. There was no need to get any rougher than this, as long as he explains where his boss and Tina are. At first, Carl cursed him, hating the mere adventurer for being full of himself. Fred reluctantly pressed the blade harder, and to the man's surprise, desperately pleaded as he was running out of time. He was stone-faced upon hearing the request. Suddenly, a knight appeared from behind, raising his blade to catch the boy off guard. He was about to be successful too if he wasn't stopped by his leader. It was confusing, but the orders were absolute, and he's told to sheath his blade for now. The situation calms down, and Fred is commended for facing cavalry without fear, but he has no time for that. He's told that Tina and Jeff are in the nearby cathedral. Deducing that he must have a background of the situation, Carl asks what he knows. He doesn't know all the details except for the Holy Maiden having proof of the priest's embezzlement. Since he already has the gist of it, the captain leaves him to drink a mana potion and explains that the church is hurrying as there's a regular meeting at the headquarters tomorrow. Even if Tina is the Holy Maiden, she's still just a young girl, and employing white knights to capture her is excessive. This revelation surprises Fred, unaware of the group he's talking about. They're made of 20 people, carefully selected for their skill and combatability. Most of the embezzled money goes to them, and they're likely guarding the cathedral as they speak. That said, the captain knows that he's worried for nothing as the boy barely used his skill to defeat his men. In reality, there are limitations to the control and copy key skill. So far, he's copied 10 abilities, and it seems to be the maximum for his level. Fred then notes how Carl suddenly became cooperative. Even the knight wonders why. More importantly, he urges him to be on his way and not waste any more time. He even lends the boy his steed, saying it's fast enough to take him to his destination in time. With this, Fred rode to the face night, leaving the captain and heading to save Tina from the clutches of evil. Having lent his speed horse, the captain asks Fred to take care of it, as it's his beloved steed that was raised with care. The young man promises to do so, saying he owes him one. He then tells them to stay put since he'll be calling the military police for backup. With solemn eyes, the knight thinks about someone and asks the boy to save him. Deep in the night, a deep voice resonated within the cathedral. Jeff stands over the maiden, saying they finally captured her and calling her a vixen. Despite her situation, Tina's eyes don't waver, and she scorns the evil priest. He orders her to return what she stole from him, but she completely refuses to do so, even questioning how he could act in such a heinous way. Scowling at the stubborn girl, he says he's left with no choice but to use his ability. She turned away helplessly, knowing what was going to come next. However, he's interrupted by a loud bang on the door. The noise alerts them to an intruder, but the priest still had no idea what was happening. Just then, Fred bursts into the cathedral, making it just in time to save the maiden. The two call to each other, and the young man stands his ground, telling Jeff to return Tina, saying they're in the middle of a sacred ritual. The man of faith refuses to do so and snaps his fingers. As soon as he told the boy to leave, several knights poured in. It's the 21 White Dove Knights, all ready to obey their master's bidding. Preparing himself for the imminent battle, Fred activates his skill and takes a blue stone out of his bag. Closing his eyes in focus, he speaks an incantation causing the item to glow. He absorbs the magic inside and replenishes his reserves. With this, his mana was back to full, and he was ready to fight. It'll take at least 15 minutes for the military police to arrive, and he has to last until then. If he uses magic until then, he's sure to run out before they come, so he has to rely on skills which are much more efficient. It's only been a while since he got his power, but there was no time to hesitate. Using his control key, he goes through his list of abilities and summons the flame bullet, which he copied from the bridge. The young man launches it at the knights, and it consumes them in a blazing flame. However, it does not work as effectively since all of them are equipped with sturdy shields. As expected, they're tougher than an average knight. Since that's the case, he wraps his hand with the excavation skill. He swings his empowered hands around and now breaks through the enemy's defenses. With this, he at least confirms that physical attacks are effective. However, the smile quickly leaves his face as he sees the men standing up despite their injuries. There was no humanity nor life force in them, and they were moving like puppets. In other words, they were monsters made to attack. Tina wonders what she's supposed to do, and blames herself for putting him in this situation. Desperate, she prays to goddess Amadeus, but is told by the priest that the Almighty is too far away for someone in true despair. To someone so high up, the voices of the small and weak will not reach. The holy maiden can't believe that a priest is even saying such a blasphemous thing. She believes in her goddess and in Fred, who promised to save her. That young adventurer was sure to untie the ropes binding her limbs. In a quaint house, a few light voices express their gratitude for the food. The children run around as soon as they finish their meal, and although Tina tells them to clean up before playing, they disappear before she could even make a point. The sound of plates, utensils, and running water rang throughout the small house. With a warm smile, an older nun says she doesn't have to help with such chores now that she's the town's holy maiden. Intending to show her filial piety, Tina rolls her sleeves up her arms. After all, the head nun isn't as young as she used to be. The two joked around, but the mood turns serious after a while, as they note the recent decrease in food. For the past 2 months, the church has been sending less funding to the orphanage. The news surprises the maiden more so when she's told that multiple applications have been sent despite donations from the believers. Wondering where the money might be going, they shake their heads in disbelief, denying the idea that the church might be stealing. It isn't enough for the young sister, so she decides to get to the bottom of it herself. Deep into the night, she snuck into the church alone and scoured the rooms to find documents and transactions for the funding. The time less food started coming in coincides with when the White Dove Knights were formed. After a while of rummaging, she finally finds the papers proving her suspicions. Jeff burst into the room all of a sudden and demanded to know who was in there sneaking around. Tina managed to hide under the furniture, but was not able to cover her tracks enough. Her veil had fallen on the ground and had her name embroidered on the cloth. The priest's eyes glowed red as his anger for her bubbled. Now she was kneeling and bound in front of him as Fred desperately fought to save her. The maiden argues that the money was meant to feed the orphans and questions what he accomplished by using it to expand the knights. The squad he funded was now surrounding a single boy and trying to defeat him in large numbers. Again, she questions if this is the reason he stole donations. The pain-faced, he denies and tries to explain, but his eyes suddenly glowed red once again, filling him with overwhelming anger. Finally seen in person, Tina realizes that the priest was suffering from his own power. She calls to Fred and announces that Jeff was being possessed by an evil spirit, which is brought by the divine revelation skill. Enraged by her unnecessary words, he smacks the maiden to silence. This triggers the young man, and he rushes to do something about it. With his skill, he checks into the details revelation. It is a skill that temporarily summons spirits to save suffering people, but will fail if used for personal desires. The last condition makes him think, if used for the wrong purpose, the skill will summon evil spirits. Now that it's much clearer, it's also more difficult, as he has no abilities to deal with spirits. Besides, the knights going after him are a bigger problem. One strikes with his blade and Fred barely blocks with his rock fist in time. This saves him for now, but his status window beeped urgently, sending alerts that his mana has dropped to the bottom. With that, the adventurer is unable to defend against the next attack, and is sent flying away. He grimaced in pain, and Tina's blurry vision barely sees him flying away. Helpless, she watches as the Dove Knight raises his blade to end the boy's life. The maiden shouts and tries to wake him up, but he remains on the ground defenseless. Fred opened his eyes, but was too weak to do anything against the blade coming his way. Just then, a familiar halberd appeared, arriving just in time to block the sword's path and save his life. The captain of the knights was there. Carl says he was wrong to have believed that a child could handle it alone. The young adventurer is surprised and asks what he was doing there. He's told not to misunderstand, as the man did not come there to save him. Instead, he was there to settle things with the problem he turned a blind eye to. Tears well in Tina's eyes, relieved that her friend was safe. However, an additional enemy doesn't matter to Yutuan. Jeff, who just tells his knights to kill them both. The Dove Knights reassemble, and Fred tries to replenish his mana with an item while Carl stands guard. Regardless of who was coming out on top, the battle was about to end. Dropping the magic stone, he charged in with his excavator arms. When an enemy sees him preoccupied, he swings with a surprise attack, but the boy manages to block the blade and defend himself in time. Fred continues his assault and plows through the entire group. A lot of them fall to the strikes, but his breathing soon grows ragged and heavy, exhausted from the seemingly unending fight. For now, he unsheathes his blade to maintain whatever is left of his mana. Resorting to swordsmanship, he swings his weapon around and manages to take a few down. As the prolonged battle was drawing to an end, the captain finally joined to provide backup. He raises his halberd high and cast Windblade, sending the Dove Knights flying into the air with a whirlwind. Fred watched in awe, seeing how skills can be elevated with mastery. There's no need to deal with the enemies one by one, and his ability's real power lies in taking entire groups down. Just then, those sent spinning started to get up like before, moving like puppets under control. Carl agrees with the young adventurer's words and notes how he fused his skill with the fireball spell from before. Told to use it again, Fred declines, saying he simply doesn't have enough magic power left. It consumes about half of his power, and costs 25 MP for a single use. To the boy's disappointment, he's called useless when it matters the most. In this case, they have no choice but to rely on Tina, the holy maiden who specializes in healing. The captain charged in first this time, aiming to make an opening. Fred uses this chance to break through the crowd and approach the young lady to receive her purifying light healing. Mind and body, it's a light that completely heals all fatigues and wounds. That is the skill that made her the town's holy maiden. He calls to her, asking to be purified and restored of his magic power. Jeff scowls upon realizing their intentions. Since this is the only way to break through the current situation, Tina immediately agrees. The priest tries to stop them, but Fred puts himself between them, stalling for time. Until now, she has no idea what happened to him in the past, or what made him betray his faith. Regardless, she believes that her prayers will be answered. It might be too idealistic for her, but she's still going to say it because it's beautiful to believe in miracles. With this, she prays as the holy maiden and as a human being, hoping to reach their God even with a small voice. Her body glowed with a gold light, calling for their Lord to answer her plea and save their people. While she does this, Jeff's body jerks and the whites of his eyes show. In addition to his body being affected by the golden light, Fred's magic power is also restored by her power. He's too shocked by what was happening to the priest that she has to remind him to take care of the knights. Snapping out of his trance, he begins his incantation and covers his arm with fire. Carl sees him approaching and is relieved that he's finally there to help. With his job over, he jumps down to take cover from the incoming blast. Fred fuses his abilities up and casts Scorching Windblade. The red in Jeff's eyes disappear, and his pupils turn back to normal from the purification. He hears a familiar voice telling him to take care of the knights. 4 months ago, in their little town, a little girl named Celine ran to him with something to show, even calling him uncle. He corrects her, saying he's a priest, not her uncle, but that doesn't matter to the little girl who's preoccupied and carrying an injured cat. Seeing how bad it is, he agrees to treat the feline right away. A little while later, the little girl returned, and running beside her was the cat that had recovered perfectly. Again, ignoring his insistence on addressing him as a priest, she thanks Jeff with a bright and warm smile that he can't help but return. Her new pet runs away, and she bids him farewell to chase after it. In that moment, Carl also appears with a report, and tells the priest that they're short-handed for patrol. Taking a look at the documents for now, he spends a few moments thinking, and decides to move the suburban squad to the city. He's warned that monsters appeared in the forest before, but he reasons that that incident was years ago. For now, he wants to focus on patrolling the city, not knowing Celine was deep in the forest. She called the cat with a loud voice, hearing some movement from the trees and shrubs nearby. The little girl explored even farther in. However, what she found was not a cute cat, but a ferocious wolf monster that snarled at her. Terror dawned on her, and the poor girl's ear-piercing screams rang throughout the forest. A storm raged and lightning crackled in the night sky. Jeff was in his office, essentially passed out from drinking too much alcohol. Gentle knocks came to his door, but the priest ignored it completely. Carl called with a soft voice. The headquarters replied to their letter, saying they can't provide funds for additional nights. He met with nothing but silence. The captain assures him that Celine's death wasn't his fault, but was an unfortunate accident. He excuses himself, but Jeff finally spoke, saying it was his decision that led to her demise. To him, he abandoned the poor girl. In his mind, he killed the child who put her trust in him. In tears, he vows to apologize to her one last time, despite knowing that an apology won't be enough for what he did. Driven by his powerful desires, evil spirit showed itself for the first time, saying he has access to money. Turning in surprise, he sees his evil reflection in the mirror. It introduces itself as his ally, and the only one who truly understands him. He argues that the money is off limits and meant to be used for the children. However, this is precisely why he must use it and ensure that they're safe from all evil. From that point on, the priest's mind started filling up with delusions, and he justified his decision to create a night order that would carry out his will. Opening his eyes in the cathedral, he sees Fred standing over that very order. Jeff grimaced and held his head, saying the being corrupting it was gone. Despite being freed, he called out to whomever was there again, still having something to ask. The three tried to stop him, but it was too late, and the man was already walking to the altar, begging for a way be saved. His eyes were full of desperation as he cast divine revelation, right after being free from its clutches. As he continued to beg for help, an unfamiliar flash of light appeared. Instead of an evil spirit, something else, something more divine was there. A warm voice spoke, calling Jeff uncle and saying it was all right. Celine's spirit smiled at him reassuringly, promising to meet again one day. Accompanied by her cat and a guiding angel, the child faded away as quickly as she was summoned. Just then, the military police arrived on the scene, ordering him to surrender to them. To the leader's surprise, the situation was already settled, and the Dove Knights were already beaten. Fred sighs, wishing they had come just a bit sooner. With this, Jeff is bound by his hands and escorted to prison. The young ones watch as he's dragged away, but Tina can't help herself, certain that their God will revive his soul and lead him to the right path. She tells him to acknowledge his sins, atone, and be sure to come back. After all, he's none other than their town's beloved priest. With the moonlight shining down on him, he feels like he can finally walk without a huge weight on his shoulders. Jeff leaves with the police, putting an end to the entire thing once and for all. Tina was handed over to the military police as a witness along with the documented evidence. Fred wants to accompany her, but given how exhausted he was, it was better to be with the police. Fortunately, they promised to make the Holy Maiden's safety a top priority. It's quite different from what they planned, but the adventurer's job there was done. She thanks him from the bottom of her heart for now, and assures that she'll properly compensate for his services later on. The two young ones part ways, and Fred's first mission is completed. The next morning, a street vendor sold newspapers announcing a huge report. People scrambled and crowded to get their hands on the paper, and even Fred, and to force himself through the thick group. Fortunately, he manages to get what he needs. A sign as he leaves the rowdy people. He checks the news and sees a report on a local priest embroiled in a huge corruption scandal. The crime mentioned was mere embezzlement, meaning the battle from last night was kept a secret. The knights involved were safe in the hospital, but have seemingly lost their memories of joining the Dove Knights. Meanwhile, the squad was meant to be reorganized with Carl appointed as their leader. Fred walked around with the paper, still trying to make sense of the things that transpired. What he saw in the altar back then was still a mystery, but he's sure that they were saved by something greater than normal. At least, that's what he wants to believe. Regardless, it was time to hit the road again and find a much easier request to fulfill. Upon entering the guild, he's greeted by the receptionist who is cheerfully waving for his attention. He greets her a good morning with a confused expression and is told to come with her. After a while of covering his eyes, the young man is told to look in front of him. To his surprise, he sees a D-rank adventurer badge and a pouch containing a 100,000 coin. The amount makes him stagger back, believing it's far too much. Seeing him decline, the staff member tells him not to play dumb as she's already well informed. The headquarters gave them a report detailing his fierce battle to protect the maiden from enemies. As a reward for his great accomplishment, he's been promoted to D rank. With that said, he gladly accepts, letting go of all hesitation. However, it doesn't end there, and she asked him to join her inside. To his surprise, he finds Tina hiding in the room, so he wonders what in the world she was doing there. In private, she goes on about realizing how inexperienced she was in the real world. For this reason, the little girl wants to venture out and train to be a proper use to others. She becomes bashful after saying this and asks if it's okay for her to join him in his adventures. Fred thinks about it for a while and says he feels like he was the one who was saved by her. Ever since he was driven out of his job, he's been wondering what it meant to have comrades. Fighting with her and Carl helped him find the answer he was looking for. With no reason to ever refuse her, he extends his hand and accepts the proposition. The two shake hands to finalize their partnership and look forward to working and counting on each other from then on. Their moment is interrupted as other adventurers rave about a mission to slay a divine beast. Although their partnership had only begun, a big job was already waiting for them on the board. They move past the crowd, pushing and splitting to see what the commotion was all about. Fred apologizes for getting a bit too close to the maiden in the process, but his eyes were set on the request to slay a divine beast. Apparently, a dragon was attacking nearby villages and had already raised some of them to Baroness. What's more, the reward was a whopping 500,000 coins. The amount makes the young man's earlier reward seem small despite it not being the case at all. Composing himself after noticing Tina's reaction, he then turns to the receptionist and cautiously asks about the dragon subjugation mission. A dragon raged above a burning village, causing its citizens to scream in absolute terror. With a magic circle around its neck, it watched as its flames consumed the buildings and continued to breathe fire, regardless of the blaze that was already going on. Locals ran for their lives, even leaving their belongings behind. A couple of men are forced to stop the mayor from running into his house, questioning if he can't see that it was already burning to ash. He orders them to let go and explains that his grandchild was still inside. With tears running down his face and desperation lacing his voice, he calls to Billy repeatedly, begging for the child to be okay. Back in the guild, Fred was asking the receptionist for details on the mission. Divine beasts, legendary creatures passed down through tales and legends like phoenixes. While it's general knowledge to some, very few have actually seen one in person. In ancient times, such beings ruled the world, but they've greatly decreased in number, eventually handing heraldship over to humans. Based on the subjugation request, it means that a legendary creature had actually appeared. It is definitely hard to believe at first, but a dragon has incited in an area east of the capital, and 30% of the land has been lost. Fred grimaced, still unable to believe the travesty. Noticing Tina's silence, he heads to the young maiden and asks if she's interested in taking the mission. More than wanting to, she says she's curious about the entire thing. They're talking about intelligent beings referred to as gods, and should not harm people without meaning. As the lady says, divine beasts govern the powers of nature and act from a neutral standpoint. If they're harming people, as the report on the request says, then it's likely that the villagers angered it in one way or another. That said, they won't really know until they ask the locals. Seeing Tina's obviously disturbed expression, Fred smiles upon making a decision and rips the request off the guild's bulletin board. He announces that he's going to take it on, and the receptionist is shocked that he intends to take it with just 2 people and a party. It's truly a daunting task, but the other option is abandoning the village and taking on an herb-picking request. What's more, the Holy Maiden likely wants to save both the villagers and the divine beast. Surprised, she asks if he has a mind-reading skill stashed away as well, but is told that she's just easy to read, a claim she's heard even from the orphanage. If there truly is a reason for the dragon's rage, then subjugation might not be the only way to deal with it. Promising to do what they can, the adventurer and the maiden team up on their first mission together. Since it seems pointless to try and stop them, the receptionist decides to be supportive and arranges a carriage for them right away. They plan the journey there, which will likely have them pass through several towns on the way. It'll take about 3 days in total, and since they're dealing with an actual dragon, the two are advised to thoroughly prepare before departing, ripping the notes off and handing it over to the adventurers. The guild staff wishes them luck and success. Beginning their journey, Tina sat under the shade of their carriage and studied her adventurer badge with a proud smile. On the other hand, Fred was right in front of her, completely dozing off from the long ride. She calls to him stone-faced, saying they're about to arrive at their destination. The young man blinks and opens his eyes, even lazily stretching his limbs after the satisfying sleep. After 3 days of rocking around, resting in such conditions was no longer a problem. Traveling on foot for now, Tina is forced to witness the wonders of nature, including how a chameleon would eat a beautiful butterfly. She hurries to Fred, who says these are all animals one wouldn't see in the city. It was truly an amazing and exciting sight to behold, but since their purpose this time wasn't sightseeing, they had to hurry and get to work. Passing through a last group of animals, they finally reached Gout village, which seemed to be in the middle of rebuilding. A girl notices them first and wonders who the strangers are, making friends first and foremost. Tina compliments the pretty dress she's wearing. The girl says the village mayor made it for her and gestures to the man behind them, who was slowly approaching. He flashes a gentle smile and laughs, while saying that they've been waiting for the adventurers. Introducing himself as Joseph, thanks them both for coming all the way to their countryside. While they must be exhausted from the long journey, he cannot offer much, and just tells them to be his family has been wool craftsmen for generations, so his hobby is making clothes for children. While walking around, Fred sees a charred and wrecked building nearby. Ask what it is. The old man suddenly donned a stone-faced expression. He shares how the dragon visited their village twice. The first time, the fields were razed to the ground, and the second left them with houses turned to ash. There were no casualties except for his grandchild who lived in that barn. He and Billy didn't get along the greatest as the old man opposed his decision to leave the town. After that, the child shut himself in the barn and locked the door. No matter how many times he called out during the fire, the boy wouldn't come out of hiding. Unable to take it anymore, the villagers pool their money to ask the adventurers for help. It isn't necessarily to avenge his grandson. After all, grudges beget grudges, and there's no need to kill a beast bearing the title of a god. With this, Fred understands that the biggest goal then would be the villagers' safety. He also believes that they didn't do anything to incur the dragon's wrath and wonders what happened. It might not be useful information, but Joseph points in a direction, saying the dragon headed towards the mountains in the forest. After burning their village down, they thank him, assuring that it's likely the most helpful thing he can do. Although moving confidently, the two wonder who they're supposed to climb such a tall and large mountain. Fred suggests using his skills to leap up or excavate the land, earning a skeptical response from Tina. However, he's as serious as can be, but she insists that he stopped joking around so much. Just then, they passed by another group who was deciding to take a break. The maiden overhears the man, saying it's a blessing that Billy died out of all the villagers. If they lost any more working people, then the village would remain a wasteland forever. Fred noticed Tina turning, but it was too late to stop her from doing anything. She called out to Crash, the demeaning but large man, and says that there's no such thing as a person whose life doesn't matter. They stared at her indignantly, wondering who the strange woman was. Fred tries to hold on to her, eager to stop things from escalating even further. She breaks free from his grip, ready to fight for what she believes in when a large shadow suddenly looms over their bodies. To their shock, the dragon was flying high, seemingly having come to wreak havoc for the third time. Fred stared at the sky in shock, unable to believe that there actually was a dragon there. The beast suddenly spun, doing a flip forward and using its tail to destroy the buildings around them. For some reason, Crash blames the adventurers for triggering its onslaught, but Tina just tells them to evacuate to someplace safe. He argues that he can't leave. Right after watching his house get destroyed, with a firmer voice, the maiden politely asked him to escape. Her tone surprises the arrogant man, and the two adventurers waste no time getting to work. They reach the mayor, who's telling the villagers to ensure the children's safety. Meanwhile, those who can fight were already drawing and aiming arrows. The projectiles fired and sped forward, but helplessly bounced off of the dragon's thick scales. It's no use, and their attacks weren't doing any damage at all. On the other hand, it actually seemed to anger the beast, which now prepared to retaliate. Things turned from bad to worse, and it sent a flurry of rocks and stones at the people below. Joseph falls to the ground after getting hit in the head. Knowing things have to be stopped, Fred asks Tina to take care of the mare while he handles the beast. On a horse, he first intends to draw its attention and drive it away from the village itself. Casting a fire spell, the young man shoots at the target, but it barely scratches, just like everything else they threw. Fortunately, this does the job of catching its aggression. Things go according to plan, and the dragon flies toward the adventurer, who fled the city and into the forest where there were less people. The nearby animals ran as their home was terrorized. Meanwhile, Fred was wondering what to do from that point on. Resorting to his only option, he activates his skill and is told that it's been upgraded after reaching a Gropal certain level. In other words, it leveled up from the battle with the Dove Knights. The system explains how the limit of abilities have increased, along with the details he can see. Explanations poured in, but he told it to quiet down as the situation was urgent. The dragon continued to charge and barreling past the trees. Suddenly, it spoke, telling the boy to run as it couldn't hold itself back anymore. Watching it continue to crash throughout the forest, Fred stubbornly kept his eyes on its status, even more intrigued after hearing its voice. Its name was Luthia, and under its name was the explanation of why it was wreaking havoc. Tame was applied, which is also why there was a magic collar around its neck. Tina arrived at that moment, asking if her partner was still okay. More importantly, he worries about Joseph's state. Hearing that he's okay, Fred explains that the dragon is being controlled by someone. Its status showing it's been tamed confirms his suspicion that the beast is being reined in by a malicious person, robbing it of its free will. With that said, their next objective isn't to subjugate the dragon, but to capture the master tamer that was bending it to its will. The tamer is likely in the Rocky Mountains where the path is too rough for horses to cross. Looking at a huge eagle perched on a tree, he says the ground isn't the only option. Watching him take rope out of his bag and take charge, Tina can't help but give an exasperated look. He spins the rope and lassos the unsuspecting bird, which screeched as it found its neck tethered. Using the writer's skill, Fred mounted the creature. The maiden still couldn't believe what he was doing, and even tries to decline when he tells her to join him on top of the eagle. Unfortunately, she doesn't have much of a say in it as usual, and she mounts it whether she's ready or not. Holding tight, they fly to the sky and head to the Rocky Mountains, aiming to save the dragon. Deep in the Rocky Mountain, a lone man laughed in delight as he looked at the wreckage left by the dragon. He smiles at Crushy's house, which was completely destroyed by the attack. However, his face soon donned a scowl upon seeing Joseph, still safe and standing despite it all. Targeting him next, he wills the dragon to strike once more. With tears in her eyes, Luthi sent stones flying his way. He falls to the ground after taking a hit, and the man smugly stares down at them, apparently taking revenge on all those who mocked him. Just then, he sees Fred fighting back, and is enraged that someone had the gall to stand in his way. Irritated, he commands the dragon to chase the boy down and kill him, which is how they ended up in the forest. Later on, the pair of adventurers arrive at the foot of the mountain, and the young man finishes drawing a magic circle for a compressed explosive on the ground. When magic power flows through it, it should expand and trigger. He does as explained, and gently pulls Tina back to safety. The circle doubled and hummed with power. She was entranced and crept closer, but is warned against touching it as he said it to be pressure sensitive to the dragon. The lines are connected, and the plan is to defeat the dragon with an explosion of the rocks. She hesitates, feeling like it's too dire of an approach. Joseph said there was no need to kill the beast, but based on what they witnessed earlier, they'll be completely overpowered if they don't end things when given the chance. Using explosives is their last resort, so they should do their best to avoid coming to that. As she accepts the plan, they hear a loud noise from above, prompting the pair to hurry up and move. The man from before screamed in anger and frustration. Forgetting he was venting on a dragon, he kicks the creature's hard, scales and winces as he nearly breaks his foot from the impact. Summoning his Tamer whip, he questions why she let the adventurer escape. He hit her face hard, and the divine beast body suddenly began jerking and trembling. As purple chains of magic tightened around her, a loud roar came out of her mouth, and she suddenly began to shrink in size. After a while, the dragon transforms and takes on the humanoid form of a woman. Luthia scowled at him, refusing to obey anyone, especially a man like him. Infuriated by her insolence, he looked at her restricted and bound body. A sinister and appalling expression spreads across his face, and he pulls on her chains, saying he should make her a bit more inclined to listen. She winces in disgust. Closing her eyes, she calls out and begs for anyone to help. Just then, they both turn their heads and see Fred entering the area and kicking the tamer with the eagle he was riding. Fred commands the tamer to get away from the dragon and sends him tumbling across the ground with a powerful kick. He and Tina urgently look around for the enormous divine beast, but are confused as they couldn't see anything of that size nearby. Certain that he heard its voice just now, he sets his eyes on Luthia, who had her face turned away. For now, he checks on her condition, and is shocked to see insane levels of vitality under her status window. Taking a closer look, he reads her name and notices something familiar. Finally, he realizes that she's the dragon wreaking havoc on the town, but is now completely bound without control. The tamer gets up and recognizes the adventurer from earlier. Knowing he must act fast, he runs to the crystal ball tool he uses for taming. Activating his power, he pours magic into it and commands his subject to devour the boy. Just then, Lethia's body squirmed, forced to cast self-regeneration. Fred holds her body, trying to figure out what was happening all of Adamius. Just then, he sees the wounds and scars on her chest disappear. He realizes that they're healing, but she tells him to get away as fast as possible. Her body transformed again, now turning back into the divine beast. The dragon roared, completely losing control over herself again. Turning back, Fred identifies the crystal ball as the source of the tamer's power. Using Grime's sword abilities, he dashed in with impressive swiftness. With his sword at the ready, he targets the enemy's orb and pierces through to break it in that instant. The man slumps down and curses the boy, but he is not completely defeated yet. In this case, he tugs on the chain binding the dragon and rises to the air with the divine beast. He was challenging the adventurer to an aerial battle, and Fred is not one to shy away, having prepared the explosives for this reason as well. With the eagle, Hell draw the pair to that spot and have Tina use her purifying ability on them. The two tamers and their beast take to the sky. With his skill, the boy sees that the man was actually Billy, the mayor's grandson, who he wasn't on good terms with. They thought he died in the barn, but there he was, the mastermind of it all. Fred calls to him, revealing that he's figured his identity out. And he's silent for a moment, but anger bubbles from hearing his grandfather's name, so he orders Luthia to send a blazing tornado of fire at him. The swift eagle manages to maneuver around and close the gap between them. Still wanting answers, Fred questions his intentions, even saying how aggrieved Joseph was from losing him. However, this only serves to infuriate Billy more, as he believes that it's all nonsense meant to mock him just like everyone else. The two beasts are forced apart once again, and the tamer says he knows nothing about what happened, saying Hell show him his talent. A dangerous look spreads across his face, and Luthia has to tell Fred to run away while he can. However, there was no time, and large rocks soon began to circle around the dragon as it used its powers as the guardian of nature. It shoots the huge stones at the boy and his eagle. They try their best to dodge and hang in there, but there are just too many coming at them at once. A boulder sped towards them, and they couldn't do anything as it hit the eagle's wing. They plummet to the ground helplessly.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.